Hello, and welcome back to Weird on the Rocks. This is a podcast that explores the weird, unusual, strange, and unexplained, all while getting our drink on. I'm your host, Katie. So today's episode is something you've most likely heard about if you're into true crime or missing persons cases at all. But if you're not, it might be a new story for you, and that is the disappearance of Maura Murray. This is an extremely well-known missing persons case, and it has gotten a lot of news and media attention, as well as social media attention, over the years since this has happened. I'm not really sure where I first heard about the Maura Murray story. It was probably another podcast, honestly, but I've been pretty much kind of borderline obsessed with it for the past few years now. One of my favorite tools for researching is a site called Reddit, which I'm sure a lot of you know about and use. And it's basically just like a discussion website where you can join subreddits dedicated to anything in the world that you're interested in. And whenever I'm researching a new case, I will join a subreddit just for that particular topic so that I can read up on people's theories and see what, the real followers of the story are saying. So like episode 30, I did The Watcher. I joined a Watcher subreddit for about a month and did some research in there and talked to some people. But with the Maura Murray story, I've been a member of the Maura Murray subreddit literally since the day I joined Reddit. It was one of the very first things I searched for. I have just been so intrigued and interested in this case. And there are always new details coming out and new theories being put forth. I'm pretty sure this is the first actual missing person case that I've covered on here. I know that I discussed Jamie Kloss back in episode 2, I believe, and she escaped from her captor and is safe now. I also covered the Sherry Papini story in episode 13, who most people believe faked her abduction, and she's now fine and safe also. But Maura Murray is still missing to this day. Honestly, I haven't covered this case yet because since it is still kind of ongoing, there's just so much information out there. And of course, a lot of it is very contradicting. And I really didn't even know where to start. There's just so much information out there. With missing persons cases, there is just so much speculation and a lot of inaccuracies in the information that's out there. So it's really hard to sift through all of it and determine what is true and what is just someone's opinion and what is, worthy of being put in the show or not. I tried my best to use reputable sources and take information from people who have done their own research and not just, read someone's idea and take it as truth and put it in my episode. And I hope that I'm able to present this in a clear and concise way for you guys that will make sense because it's a lot. In today's episode, I'm going to be discussing Maura Murray herself, the events that led up to her disappearance, and what has transpired in the 16 years since she disappeared. In the next episode, part 2, I will be discussing the theories about what could have happened to her. But before we get going, I want to share another podcast promo with you guys. This one is from my friends over at the Ghost Town podcast, so let's listen to their promo.
Are you into the secret histories of exorcisms, Christmas massacres, killdozers, and concert disasters?
How about haunted mansions, the Philadelphia experiment, the Dorm of Death, or candy corn?
Then you're gonna love Ghost Town, a hilarious and sometimes not so hilarious twice-weekly podcast.
On Wednesdays, we discuss the secret history of an abandoned, unexplored, haunted, or mysterious place from anywhere in the world.
And on Fridays, we cover an amazing historical failure from any time in history.
Ghost Town is 100% safe and legal. We guarantee it.
It's also fun, spooky, and can contain a riot,
a massacre,
a murder,
or an arch deluxe.
I'm Rebecca Lieb.
I'm Jason Horton.
And this is Ghost Town. And you can find Ghost Town wherever you listen to podcasts.
Before we get into the good stuff, I want to share this week's beverage of choice. Tonight, I'm drinking a Mango Cart beer from the Golden Road Brewing Company. This is a really nice, fruity wheat beer, my favorite kind of beer. This would be so good on like a hot summer day. We actually picked these up from Costco on a family trip that we went on last month. And the case also comes with a pineapple flavor, and they are both so, so good. If you see these at Costco, definitely pick them up. The can says that these flavors were inspired by the iconic fruit cart vendors in Los Angeles, which I think is such a cool idea, and it really translated well into this nice fruity beer. All right, well, let's get into it. Cheers, and let's get weird. Maura Murray was born on May 4th, 1982 in Hanson, Massachusetts. She was the fourth child born to Fred and Lori Murray, who already had 3 children, Fred, Kathleen, and Julie. After Maura's birth, they had another son, Kurt. When Maura was 6, her parents Fred and Lori divorced, and Maura lived mostly with her mother. However, as Maura's friend Liz Druniak would say, Maura was especially close with her father, and he was the one picking her up from school, taking her to practice, and even coached their basketball team. Maura was always very active and interested in running and playing sports. She attended Whitman-Hanson Regional High School, where she was a star athlete on the school's track team. Her friend Liz said that they had a tight group of friends that remained close through high school and into college. And another friend, Katie Jones, said, quote, "There were 7 of us that were always together," end quote. Maura then was accepted into the United States Military Academy in West Point, New York, a very prestigious school that is extremely hard to get into. Maura's older sister Julie had graduated from West Point, and some close to Maura said that she felt pressured to also attend the school. She decided to major in chemical engineering and stayed at West Point for 3 semesters. In 2001, during her time at West Point, Maura met Billy Rausch, and the two began dating. While at West Point, Maura stole $5 worth of makeup from a convenience store at Fort Knox. She was caught, and this resulted in an honor code violation. She was not officially expelled from West Point, but she was asked to no longer attend, and she transferred to the University of Massachusetts Amherst, or UMass, to study nursing. Her and Billy decided to continue their relationship, although they were now attending different schools. Billy's mom, Sharon, said that their family loved Maura, and the two seemed very serious and were even discussing marriage in the future. In November of 2003, Maura was caught using a stolen credit card to purchase food from several restaurants and on-campus food establishments. Maura admitted to finding someone's receipt in a trash can that had their credit card number on it. When police found the receipts from the food Maura had ordered, they noticed that she was ordering large amounts, such as 2 pizzas or 2 Subway sandwiches at a time. Some speculate that she was buying food for another person, although she never admitted to this, and nobody ever came forward saying they were the one getting food bought for them. However, some of her family members and friends believe that she was relapsing from bulimia, something that she had struggled with in high school, and that she was buying these large amounts of food that she could binge on. The charges on the stolen credit card were less than $250, so Maura was not arrested for this, but instead was put on probation for 3 months. When she was booked by the campus police, they took a mugshot of her to have on file. Over the years, many have pointed out that in this picture, which I put on the Facebook and Instagram page, that Maura doesn't even look like herself. Many think that the usually very attractive and well put together young woman looks almost evil in this photo, and as if she was experiencing some sort of mental health issue. However, many point out that she was probably just ashamed, and of course, you wouldn't look happy in a mugshot. February 5th, 2004, 3 months after she was caught with the stolen credit cards, Maura was working a late-night shift at her campus security job. While working, Maura spoke on the phone to her older sister, Kathleen. They hung up, and soon after, Maura broke down in tears and became hysterical. When her supervisor came to Maura's desk to check on her, she said that Maura was, quote, completely zoned out. No reaction at all. She was unresponsive, end quote. Her supervisor kept asking her what was wrong, to which she eventually replied, "My sister," Around 1 o'clock a.m., her supervisor escorted Maura back to her dorm room. Her supervisor said that she felt nervous leaving Maura alone in such a state, but that Maura reassured her that it was okay and that she had a roommate who would be home soon, but she did not have a roommate. 2 days later, on February 7th, 2004, Maura's father, Fred, came to visit her at UMass. Fred said that they spent the day used car shopping for Maura because her 1996 Saturn was getting old and wasn't running too great. In a later interview, her father, Fred, said, quote, "We had a car picked out and we were going to go pick it up the next weekend and get it. But that didn't happen. It would have been safe. I wish I would have bought it that weekend." End quote. However, none of Maura's friends say that she mentioned anything about looking at cars with her dad or that she was even considering buying a new car. After car shopping, Fred took Maura and her friend Kate, who she had met on the track team, out to dinner at a local pub, where Maura had 2 Black Russians, a cocktail made of Kahlua and vodka. Later, Fred would also tell investigators that he took the girls to a liquor store where they bought some alcohol. In his first time telling the story, Fred said that he waited in the car while the girls went into the store, but later changed his story and said that he went into the store with them. Maura told her dad that there was a dorm party that night that they wanted to go to, so he went back to his hotel. Then, despite knowing Maura had already had 2 cocktails at dinner and had just purchased more alcohol and was going to a party, he let her borrow his brand new Toyota Corolla. Maura arrived at the party at 10:30 p.m., and it was held in the dorm room of her friend Sarah, who she worked with at her other job at an art gallery. She left the party around 2:30 a.m. on February 8th. Later, Maura's friend Kate was interviewed, and while she claimed that the dorm room was packed, she couldn't recall any names of people in attendance or who Maura had talked to at the party. On her way back to her dad's hotel room around 3:30 a.m., Maura drove into a guardrail on Route 9 in Hadley, Massachusetts, causing $10,000 worth of damage to his brand new car. The responding officer wrote an accident report, but there is no record of him conducting a field sobriety test. A tow truck driver drove Maura back to her father's hotel room. Her father said that she came in and went to sleep without him noticing her, although she didn't have a room key and it isn't determined how she got in. He did not know she was there until the next morning when he woke up. At 4:49 a.m., while Fred was asleep, a call was made from Fred's phone to Maura's boyfriend, Billy. Billy said it was a short conversation in which Maura was upset about wrecking her dad's car. He was able to calm her down a bit, and they agreed to talk the next day. The next morning, Fred became aware of the damage to his car, which fortunately was going to be covered by his auto insurance. In an interview on the Montel Williams show, Fred said, quote, "I wasn't actually all that upset. I was just concerned with how I was going to get back to my job because it was Sunday and all the car places were closed. Maura was upset and it haunts me, but I think she felt like she had let her father down." End quote. Fred was able to rent a car, dropped Maura back off at her dorm, and then he went back to Connecticut where he lived. That night, once he was back home, he called Maura to remind her to get an accident form from the Registry of Motor Vehicles. They agreed to talk the next day to discuss the forms and to file an insurance claim over the phone. Fred didn't know this, but it would be the last time that he would talk to his daughter. The next day, Maura used her computer to visit MapQuest and to look for directions to the Berkshires and Burlington, Vermont. Around 1 p.m., she emailed her boyfriend Billy and said, quote, "I got your messages, but honestly, I didn't feel like talking to much of anyone. I promised to call you today, though." End quote. She ended the email with, "Love you, stud." She then made a phone call to inquire about renting a condo at a place in Bartlett, New Hampshire, where she had stayed with her family in the past. This phone call lasted 3 minutes, in which the owner decided not to rent the condo to Maura. At 1:24 p.m., she emailed her supervisor at the nursing school and told her that she would be out of class for the next week due to a death in the family, but nobody had died. At 2:05 p.m., she called a phone number that provided information about booking hotels in a town called Stowe, Vermont. This call lasted 5 minutes, but she was never actually able to speak with anyone and was most likely listening to pre-recorded information. At 2:18 p.m., she called her boyfriend Billy and left a message saying that she promised they would talk later. Billy had been trying to call Maura all morning and she was ignoring his calls. And the only reason he missed this call was because he was on the other line with Maura's friend Kate. Although this has never been confirmed, it's believed that Billy was asking Kate what was wrong with Maura and if something had happened to make her ignore his phone calls. There were also some reports of Billy being controlling and having anger issues, so it's possible he was also calling Kate to try and track Maura down when she wanted some space from him. Then at 2:21, 2:22, and 2:24 p.m., there were 3 missed calls from Billy that Maura ignores. Maura then packed up her car with clothing, toiletries, textbook, and her birth control pills. Later, when police would search her dorm room, they found that all the art was off the walls and most of her belongings were packed away in boxes. They also found a printed out email to Billy on top of one of the boxes. There is no known copy online of this email, but supposedly it discussed some relationship problems the two of them were having, and some accounts say that it actually mentioned a prior infidelity of Billy's. Police also searched her computer and found that she had been doing research on pregnancy and was Googling questions such as alcohol's effect on a fetus. At 3:30 p.m. on February 9th, Maura left campus in her black Saturn sedan and then stopped at an ATM where she withdrew her entire bank account, which was around $280. CCTV shows her at this ATM alone. Maura then stopped at a liquor store where she purchased $40 worth of alcohol. Receipts show that she bought Bailey's Irish Cream, Kahlua, vodka, and a box of Franzia wine. The Bailey's Irish Cream, Kahlua, and vodka can be made to make a White Russian, and the Kahlua and vodka can be made to make a Black Russian, one of Maura's favorite cocktails. Maura then stopped by the Massachusetts Registry of Vehicles and picked up the accident forms that her dad had asked her to get. She then left Amherst around 4 p.m. and at 4:37 p.m. used her cell phone for the last time to check her voicemail. Sometime around 7 o'clock that night, Tim and Faith Westman heard a loud thump outside their home in Haverhill, New Hampshire on Route 112. This area is in the White Mountains, a very isolated and snowy area. In fact, the White Mountains are so isolated that this is where Breaking Bad's character Walter White hid for several months in a hunting cabin while there was a manhunt for him. The Westmans looked out their window to see a black Saturn up against a snowbank, facing west in the eastbound lane. Faith Westman called 911 at 7:27 p.m., and Officer Cecil Smith was dispatched to the scene. While on this call, Faith told the dispatcher that she saw someone smoking a cigarette in the passenger side of the car. At 7:30 p.m., Butch Atwood, a school bus driver, was driving home on Route 112 in his school bus, which he brought home at night. Butch came along Maura and her car, which was facing the wrong way in the road as if it had spun around. He got out of the bus and talked to Maura. He said she didn't appear to be injured or bleeding, but seemed out of it, was shivering badly, and was very shaken up. He offered to call for help, but Maura said please don't, and that she had already called AAA for assistance. AAA has no record of this call being made. Butch offered to take Maura in the school bus back to his home to wait, but she declined his offer and he went home. At 7:37, Karen McNamara says she was driving home from work when she came upon Maura's car in the road. There was a police SUV already there, facing bumper to bumper with Maura's car. Karen claims to have pulled over briefly and saw nobody in or around the car and continued home, seeing nobody walking on the road. However, this witness account contradicts police records, which show that the first officer did not show up for 10 more minutes. While Karen McNamara says this was happening, Butch Atwood, the school bus driver, was still driving home. Butch had lived in the area a long time and knew that there was no cell phone service in the area, so Maura could not have called AAA from her cell phone like she said she did. Once Butch Atwood got home, he called the police at 7:43 p.m. He was not able to see Maura's car while he was on the phone with the police, but remember seeing several cars passing by while he was on the phone. Police records show that Officer Cecil Smith arrived on scene at 7:46 p.m. Nobody was in or around the car. He immediately spoke to Faith and Tim Westman. They told Officer Smith that while they were waiting for him, the light inside Maura's car and her trunk light went on and off several times. Faith Westman said there was a, quote, flurry of activity near the trunk of the car, end quote, and also mentioned again that she saw someone smoking a cigarette in the passenger side. Maura had not come to their home for assistance, and they didn't see her flee the scene. Reports showed that her car had impacted a tree on the driver's side, damaging the headlight, and had pushed the car's radiator into the fan, making it undrivable. The windshield had also been cracked on the driver's side, and the airbags had been deployed. The car was locked. Inside the car were fresh red stains on the roof of the car and the driver's side door that appeared to be wine, and police found the damaged box of Franzia wine in the back seat. There was a Diet Coke bottle in the middle console that also smelled of wine. Inside the car, they also found Maura's AAA card, the accident report forms she had picked up earlier that day, gloves, CDs, jewelry, driving directions to Burlington, Vermont, a stuffed animal, the book Not Without Peril, which was about mountain climbing in the White Mountains, and her birth control pack with 4 pills missing. To this day, her cell phone, debit and credit cards, and the bottles of Bailey's, vodka, and Kahlua have never been found. Officer Cecil Smith also spoke to bus driver Butch Atwood, and around 8 p.m., the two of them began searching the snowy area for Maura. Soon after, fire and EMS showed up to the scene. At 8:49 p.m., Maura's black Saturn was towed to a local garage. Once it was dropped off at the garage, the workers noticed that there was a rag stuffed into the Saturn's tailpipe. Fred Murray later said that Maura's car was having problems and that he advised her to put the rag in the tailpipe. At 9:30 p.m., Officer Smith left the scene. To this day, 16 years later, Maura's car still sits in an impound lot in a grassy field. To put the entire scene simply, journalist Joe McGee, who wrote for the Patriot Ledger in Quincy, Massachusetts, said, quote, "At a hairpin turn, she went off the road. Her car hit a tree. At that point, a person came along who was driving a bus. It was a neighbor. He asked her if she needed help. She refused. About 10 minutes later, police showed up to the scene, and Maura Murray was gone." End quote. The following day, February 10th, 2004, a be on the lookout was issued for Maura. She was reported as wearing a dark coat, jeans, and a backpack. She was described as 5'7", brown hair, 120 pounds. The Haverhill police called Fred Murray and told him that his daughter's car had been found abandoned and that she could not be located. At 5 p.m. on February 10th, Maura was officially labeled as missing. The next morning, February 11th, Fred arrived in Haverhill, Massachusetts, and along with his 2 other daughters and the Haverhill Fish and Game Department, they started searching the area for Maura. Maura's mother, Lori, had to remain at home in Hanson, Massachusetts due to a fractured ankle, and she did not participate in any of the searches. A police dog tracked the scent from one of the gloves in Maura's car only about 100 feet before it lost the scent. No footprints or signs of Maura were found, and the police thought that she had most likely left the scene in another car. At 5 o'clock that evening, Maura's boyfriend Billy Roush and his family arrived in Haverhill. Billy told police that his phone had been off for a while he was going through airport security, but when he turned it back on, he had an odd voicemail, which he described as, quote, "The message basically is just a woman breathing and possibly a whimper or some sort of noise at the end, which he believed to be her," end quote. He said he called the number back immediately, but an automated voice said that it was made from a prepaid calling card. Billy was hopeful this voicemail was from Maura, as she often used prepaid cards to call him, and Billy's mother, Sharon, said she gave Maura 2 prepaid cards when she was visiting their family for Thanksgiving. Police took Billy's phone and examined the voicemail and determined that what he heard was just static and not a woman's voice, and that they had traced it back to a calling card used by the Red Cross. Billy was questioned privately by the police, and he said he was in Fort Sill, Oklahoma at the time of her accident, where he attended school. Around this time, the police issued a statement that they believe Maura came to the area to either run away or commit suicide, and the Haverhill police said, quote, "Our concern is that she's upset or suicidal," end quote. Maura's family did not believe this and assured them that Maura was not suicidal and had nothing to run away from. The search expanded into Vermont, where Fred Murray was shocked to hear that the authorities didn't even know about her disappearance yet. 10 days into the search, the FBI joined. Helicopters with thermal imaging equipment and more cadaver and search dogs were brought in. On February 26th, 17 days after she disappeared, Maura's sister found a ripped pair of women's underwear on a snowbank. DNA testing showed that they did not belong to Maura. At the end of February, the police returned the items found in Maura's car to her family, and on March 2nd, the family checked out of their hotel room. Maura's friend Kate, who she had attended the dorm room party with, never assisted in any of the searches. Fred Murray returned to Haverhill every weekend for months and continued to look for his daughter. The Haverhill police received several calls from concerned citizens who found Fred trespassing on their property looking for Maura. On March 19th, 2004, just 40 days after Maura went missing, 17-year-old Brianna Maitland went missing from Montgomery, Vermont, 66 miles from where Maura had disappeared. Early on, the police and the media drew comparisons between the two girls and believed they were somehow connected and that a serial killer might be on the loose. However, police quickly dismissed any connections between the two cases and said they believed, quote, Maura was headed for an unknown destination and may have accepted a ride in order to continue to that location, end quote. They also added that there was zero evidence to prove that any crime had been committed. In the years since, evidence has shown that Brianna Maitland was most likely murdered by people she knew and have dismissed any connections between Brianna and Maura. Brianna Maitland is also still missing. Between July and December of 2004, once the snow had melted, police conducted numerous searches for Maura, but nothing was found. In December of 2004, a man named Larry contacted Fred Murray and gave him a rusty knife. He said the knife belonged to his brother, who he believed killed Maura. His brother had a criminal past, was very violent, and lived only 1 mile from Maura's crash site in an A-frame house. He also told Fred that his brother and his brother's girlfriend started acting stranger than usual after Maura's disappearance. Also, a few days after Larry gave Fred his knife, his brother scrapped his car. However, when Larry's family was interviewed, they said that he made the whole thing up for the reward money, which was $75,000, and that he had a long history of drug abuse. At the time, nothing more came of this. In 2005, Fred Murray petitioned New Hampshire Governor Craig Benson to aid in the search, and Fred also appeared on the Montel Williams show to help publicize the case. In 2006, more individuals and agencies began to help in the search for Maura, including the New Hampshire League of Investigators, 10 retired police officers and detectives, and the Molly Bish Foundation, which was created in honor of 16-year-old Molly Bish, who went missing in 2000. Tom Shamshak, a former police chief and a member of the Licensed Private Detectives Association of Massachusetts, also offered his help and said, quote, "It appears that this is something beyond a mere missing persons case. Something ominous could have happened here," end quote. In 2006, the police decided to follow up on the story told by Larry, the man who had accused his brother of killing Maura. They took cadaver dogs to his brother's A-frame house, who allegedly went bonkers in a closet in the upstairs of the house. Carpet samples were taken from this closet, but to this day, the police have never said if they were tested for any DNA. Since then, the floors have been refurbished and there is no longer carpet in the house. In 2009, Maura's case was added to the New Hampshire Cold Case Unit. And in 2010, Fred criticized the police for treating it like a missing person case and not a criminal manner. He continued searching for his daughter and urging authorities to continue their search as well. Over the years, with a rise in technology and social media, Maura's case has garnered a lot of attention from the media and many armchair detectives who like to investigate the case on their own. There are hundreds of articles, blogs, and forums available where people discuss every single detail of this case and try to piece together their own theories about what could have happened to Maura. In 2012, followers of the case noticed some YouTube videos posted by a user named Mr. 112 Dirtbag. In one video posted on the 8-year anniversary of Maura's disappearance, a man can be seen sit in front of some cryptic imagery, laughing manically. He then winks, and the words "Happy Anniversary" are displayed across the scene. In another video, the camera zooms in on a lift ticket from Bretton Woods Ski Resort, which was near where Maura went missing. The ticket was from February 11th, 2004, 2 days after Maura disappeared. Eventually, the man was identified as Alden Olson, a man who struggled with mental health issues and had a history of homelessness. Journalist James Renner, who had created the site mauramurray.blogspot and was doing a deep investigation into her case, was also sent threatening videos by Alden Olson. James Renner looked into Olson's past and discovered a criminal history that included an arrest for threatening family members with a weapon. Alden Olson was also looked into by the police and determined not to be a suspect, and they dismissed his videos as, quote, a cruel and hideous ploy for attention, end quote. In a 2014 New York Daily News article, 10 years after her disappearance, Senior Assistant Attorney General Jeffrey Strelzin said, quote, no one knows for sure where Maura is or what happened to her. We haven't had any credible sightings of Maura since the night she disappeared, end quote. Fred Murray was also interviewed for this article, and he admitted that he thought Maura was dead and that he thought foul play was involved, and he would not give up his search for the truth. He said, quote, there's no letting go. My daughter wouldn't want me to quit on her. She'd want me to keep trying to find out who grabbed her, end quote. Investigator John Healy also expressed his belief that Maura was a victim of foul play and said, quote, she got into the wrong car. She went to the wrong house. 1 minute she's there, 10 minutes later she's not. In Maura's case, we're one step away from thinking alien abduction. It happened so fast, end quote. Around this time, rumors also started swirling that Maura was in Canada, and numerous people claimed that they have seen her out and about. When asked about the possibility of Maura being alive and well in Canada, Assistant Attorney General Jeffrey Strelzin and investigator John Healy both said that while it isn't impossible, it is very unlikely, and that pulling off a disappearing act like that would take extreme planning and organizing on Maura's behalf. When Fred Murray was asked about his daughter fleeing to Canada, he immediately shot down the theory. In 2016, Tim Pilleri and Lance Rinstierna, hosts of the Missing Maura Murray podcast, along with Officer Cecil Smith, decided to reinvestigate the A-frame house in which cadaver dogs had once picked up a scent of human remains. Inside of a small bedroom closet, they found what appeared to be blood on some wooden panels. Smith took some wood chip samples from the closet, and a molecular geneticist tested the wood chips using a chemical compound. The samples turned pink, meaning that blood was present. However, police said that the samples were too degraded to be able to match to anyone, and the blood could have easily been from something else that happened in the 12 years since Maura had disappeared. In 2017, 2 videos appeared on YouTube from the user Maura Murray Loves Me. The first video was titled Where I Put Maura, and it filmed from the point of view of someone walking around an old barn and looking inside of it. The video appeared as if it was old and taken on a camcorder, but it was revealed that it was filmed on a phone using an old-timey filter. The second video was titled The End and showed the words, "You were too slow." It then showed a handmade map that included several X's, a large blue spot which many believe is a body of water, a symbol of several wrenches put together, and the letters BIP. It then shows a photo of Maura, and over her face the word "Find." One of the hosts from the podcast True Crime Garage, who was doing an episode on Maura, found the videos on YouTube and downloaded them before they were deleted the next day. They sent the videos to the police, but nothing ever came of it. Many believe that it was once again Alden Olson pulling a disgusting prank. On the 15th anniversary of Maura's disappearance, February 2019, Fred Murray said in an interview that he still believed that Maura was dead from foul play, and that he still had his suspicions about that A-frame house. And when asked about the cadaver dogs alerting to the scent of human remains, he said, quote, "That's my daughter, I do believe," end quote. So in February of 2019, once again, cadaver dogs were brought into the house, where they went straight to the basement this time. Ground-penetrating radar was used, which showed that something was under the home, and the current owners allowed the police to dig under the house and cut into the concrete. However, in a press conference a month later, the FBI, state police, and Attorney General's office announced, quote, "I can tell you that no evidence was found in connection with the case," end quote. Assistant Attorney General Jeffrey Strelzin said, quote, "We certainly did not believe that there was credible evidence, but we did conduct the search. It was really done just to cross something off the list," end quote. They also said they concluded that the ground-penetrating radar had detected disturbed ground, not a body. Tim Polari, one of the hosts of the Missing Maura Murray podcast, said, quote, "This is a very disappointing development. As much as we've trained ourselves to not get our hopes up, we definitely were optimistic that this was Maura and the beginning of the end of the case. At least we can cross another lead off the list," end quote. And Fred Murray said, quote, "This one hurts. This one hurts a lot," end quote. Since Maura's disappearance 16 years ago, there have not been any confirmed sightings of her. All of those close to her claim to know nothing and say that they have not spoken to her since she went missing. In 2016, journalist James Renner, who created the MauraMurray.blogspot website dedicated to her case, also wrote the book True Crime Addict: How I Lost Myself in the Mysterious Disappearance of Maura Murray. And in 2015, Tim Polari and Lance Rinstierna started the Missing Maura Murray podcast, which was then picked up by the Oxygen Network as a series called The Disappearance of Maura Murray. There are countless online groups and forums dedicated to Maura's case, including a Facebook page with 17,000 members and a subreddit with 15,000 members. And when you Google most famous missing persons cases, Maura's face pops up along with Madeleine McCann and Natalie Holloway. And although people are creating new theories to her disappearance daily, there have been no new developments or news about Maura's disappearance since the search of the A-frame house last February. All right, well, that's going to be it for today's episode. While you wait for the next one, I want you guys to really think about what you think could have happened to Maura. Maybe your theory is something that I'll mention in part 2, or, maybe it's a completely new theory that nobody has even thought up yet. In the meantime, if this story intrigues you, then I encourage you to do your own research. The Missing Maura Murray podcast is an awesome resource, as well as James Renner's blog. And of course, that subreddit is a great rabbit hole to go down if you're bored in quarantine right now. And I'll catch you guys back here in 2 weeks to discuss the theories about what really happened to Maura Murray. But until then, cheers and stay weird.
That was a Titancast episode.